I live tweeted the debates, and I saw some pretty cringe-inducing moments, but other people may have different thoughts about what they saw. Luckily, Team Rising is here to tell us what they thought about last night.
Zach Friend is a Democratic strategist and former spokesperson for Obama for America. Gabby Orr is a White House reporter for Politico. Welcome.
Thanks for both of you joining us after probably a late night for all of us last night. I mean, there were so many different things to talk about. First, I mean, before we even get into the debate, one of the things that caught quite a bit of attention is that there was this ad on Sinclair Broadcasting of, I think it was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's face literally burning. We have it up on the screen in front of us. Gabby, you actually witnessed this live. I mean, what did you make of this, and who is this organization?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
The PAC that ran this ad is called Faces Pact, and it appears to be a PAC that supports young Republican candidates for office. First time that I ever saw this ad, my husband and I were watching the debate last night, and we couldn't believe what we were seeing. You know, there's certainly a way to take what you're seeing on the Democratic side and turn it into talking points about socialism,
right.
And this is not the way to do that. I mean, the imagery that was in this ad was just brutal and gruesome, and there were probably young kids watching this debate with their parents, and that's not something that you want to see.
Oh yeah, that's scary. I mean, Zach, did you have a chance to look at this?
I did see it live. I agree with Gabby's comments, and I also think what's interesting though is that they're getting a lot of earned media out of it now. So in some respects, it ended up doing a lot of what they want to do. You take out one ad, and then we end up talking about it for a couple of days.
And let's be clear about what Sinclair is. This is a right-wing ideological network that has been consolidating local news around the country. And I'm sure if you go back through their archives, you would find no shortage of umbrage about protesters making people's dinners uncomfortable. Protesters saying, like, you know, get out of this restaurant because you're putting kids in cages. Here they are burning a member of Congress in effigy on television. Why the double standard?
Well, I know that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez responded on Twitter. I think she called it a love letter to the GOP of white supremacy. So I guess everybody wins in this, and everybody gets what they want. But let's actually get to the debate. First, I want to take a look at everybody's talking about this. Julian Castro versus Joe Biden on the legacy of Barack Obama. Let's take a listen, and we'll get the reaction.
I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama, and you're not.
I'll be surprised to him.
Zach, former spokesperson for Obama for America, you started chuckling the moment you said it. Give us the Obama take.
Well, I don't know. Let me say this. I'll say that Julian Castro didn't do himself any favors on the fact that he had a lot of interesting policy ideas last night that he actually stepped on by doing this. I mean, the only conversation anybody's having today isn't on the substance of the debate, but the style by which he attacked the vice president. And so I don't think that this is going to do any good for him as far as moving forward on the post-debate polls. And I think that a lot of people, and in fact, a lot of people in my family who watched it said he went too far, and I think that that's an interesting sense of a lot of the average voters in America.
Well, I'm not quite sure because, Gabby, I mean, President Trump did this all throughout 2016, right? I mean, everybody in Washington is aghast that he would break the civility norms. I mean, do we really have civility norms anymore? Is it really something that's going to respond with voters? I know it's different dynamics on that side. What do you think?
Right. I think with Democratic primary voters, it's not going to go over well. I mean, if you've seen the coverage just in the last 12 hours, it's been extremely negative about that moment. And one of the things that's interesting is sort of the hill to die on for Julian Castro in this debate was Obamacare. He kept saying over and over again that what he would do is improve it, that what it was when he was in the administration was just terrible. I mean, Jim Mattis resigned from the Trump administration because he opposed the president's decision to withdraw troops from Syria. If Julian Castro was this upset about the state of Obamacare when he was HUD secretary, he should have resigned in protest. And so for him just wait until he's running for president 3 years later to bring this up, I just think it was a really inauthentic moment.
Can we talk about this Castro moment, though, in the context of Biden's paternalistic racism that he displayed in the same debate? Like, the entire city of Washington is up in arms about this incivility, but kind of giving Biden a pass for this one moment. I don't know if we have it.
Yeah, let's take a listen to that moment of Biden talking about the legacy of slavery in this country.
We bring social workers into homes of parents to help them deal with how to raise their children. It's not that they don't want to help. They don't know quite what to do. Play the radio, make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone, make sure the kids hear words. A kid coming from a very poor school, or a very poor background, will hear 4 million words fewer spoken by the time they get there.
So what Ryan was getting at, well, I mean, everybody on Twitter noticed the record player thing, but what they were talking about is he talked about let's get social workers in parent households. I've seen the progressive left really up in arms about this, saying it's like a like Ryan said, paternalistic racism.
This was in response to a question about the legacy of slavery.
Right.
How are you going to address the legacy of slavery? And he said, we're going to, and I think he got covered by his incoherence and his rambling answer. But if you peel that back underneath, we're going to address the legacy of slavery by sending social workers into people's homes and teaching them how to parent.
What do you think, Zach? Yeah.
Well, I think that he needs to have a better answer than the same answer he gave 40 years ago. It's just something that you've pointed out, even in your own book. I mean, this is something that, there's times when you need to evolve, and this would be an issue that I think that he needs to come up with a better answer. Ironically, sort of tangentially to Gabby's point, the Democratic primary voters, though, aren't the Twitter voters. I mean, we have to recognize that over half self-identify as conservative or moderate, and realistically, this will not impact them at the poll component. But moving forward, if you want to represent the new modern Democratic Party, that's the next generation Democratic Party, you're going to have to come up with a better answer.
That's the main thing, Gabby. Just as there's so many times where they're like, well, what about this Iraq war voters? I mean, he never says, I'm sorry. Actually, Iraq, I'll give him credit. That was actually the one time he was like, I made a mistake by doing this, but he's not really apologizing for many of the other things he did in the administration. There seems to be a pattern in which he kind of dances around some of his past record, and he won't really say, I'm sorry or I was wrong.
Which is working to his favor.
Yeah.
I mean, to give him credit, it's a strategy that seems to be working. I remember that Politico, my outlet, did a piece at the beginning of the Democratic primary calling it the I'm sorry primary, because every single candidate was apologizing for past votes, past positions that they had made or held, and Biden wasn't one of them. I mean, sure, he evades some answers sometimes. He gives questionable responses to answers like the ones on what to do about slavery, but at the end of the day, to not apologize, I think actually boosts him and makes him appear stronger than he might actually be as a candidate. It's certainly a strategy that our current president has employed, and one that really his base appreciates.
Yeah, and one of the reasons it is smart politics is because you consolidate your moderate vote there who agree with you generally, and they don't want to see you kowtowing to much of that. So it's not bad politics. Let's also take a listen to Kamala Harris. She talked a little bit about Medicare for all in a basic lie. I'm very comfortable calling it that. Let's take a listen to that.
I support Medicare for all, I always have, but I wanted to make the plan better, which I did, which is about offering people choice, not taking that from them.
I mean, she said she had been for Medicare for all from the very beginning. It's obviously just not true. I mean, she has backed away from it ever since. Well, Zach, I mean, so many times she says that she supports something and tries to kowtow to the progressive left. Then she's like, oh, I misheard the question, or I misheard the answer, and I actually meant something. Now I think what is hers called? Medicare for choice, something. What Medicare for all plus, minus, whatever it is. She needs to make up her mind at some point. What do you think?
Well, I think that's actually why Senator Harris has been slipping in the polls. I think when she had an amazing rollout, and she's my home state senator, and she's actually a remarkable person. I know her personally. I feel that if she came out as her authentic self, I mean, who she truly is. By the way, she was a prosecutor through and through. Own it. You got to own these things. If you think that there's issues in Medicare for all, own it. I mean, and as you saw last night in the debate, the candidates that actually owned their positions, I thought, were viewed in a more positive way. As she's had difficulty trying to thread that needle, and look, it's a national race, big deal, different microscope, right? I think that that's where she's been starting to struggle, at least in resonating with the general American voters.
What do you think, Gabby?
Yeah, I think Zach makes a great point. I mean, she should own the fact that she was a prosecutor and use that to her advantage. And candidates who did do that on stage last night, Beto O'Rourke is one of them on gun reform. That stood out to me as a moment where obviously the progressive left is going to appreciate his candor on that issue.
Right.
And these packaged responses, her continuing to vacillate between positions on health care, it just doesn't help in a Democratic primary where people want to know what your clear position is on issues.
Absolutely. All right, both of you guys sit tight. We're going to come right back after a quick break.